Whitney, some people don't believe that Jeffrey Epstein is dead. Some people are saying that they believe that he's still alive,
Yeah.
but I think most of them do not believe that he took his own life. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very clear that if he did take his own life, he definitely had help in doing so, if that is the case. But, frankly, I don't think anyone really knows what happened. And I don't want to sit here and be a gatekeeper telling people he's dead, he's not dead. Most people accept he's dead, and so I tend to say that. And if new evidence is presented, I'll happily accommodate that. Um, but I'm not going to like dismiss people who say he's still alive, because frankly, nobody knows. And there's been a lot of obfuscation about what went on the night that he was reportedly found dead and all of this.
The official story of Jeffrey Epstein's death has never sat right with the public, and for good reason. Even mainstream outlets are now uncovering disturbing inconsistencies. According to a recent investigation by CBS, which included a complete digital reconstruction of the Special Housing Unit, or SHU, where Epstein was held, surveillance footage from his final night shows a mysterious, orange figure climbing the stairs toward his cell. Investigators brushed it off as a guard carrying laundry, but independent forensic experts told CBS they're convinced it was someone in an inmate's jumpsuit, someone who shouldn't have been there. In a recent discussion with the Sabby Sabs YouTube channel, investigative journalist and author Whitney Webb, one of the foremost researchers into Epstein's network of power and corruption, shares her opinion on what really happened on that fateful night. While most people accept that Epstein is dead, Whitney refuses to dismiss those who argue otherwise. She acknowledges the possibility he may have been spirited out of prison, but makes one thing clear. If he did die that night, it wasn't by suicide. He had help, and the truth of what happened remains buried. Stay with us as Whitney unpacks the deeper history behind cases like Epstein's, where powerful insiders and intelligence-linked figures ensure that those who know too much rarely live to tell the tale, as well as more important tidbits from the CBS investigation. But before we dive in, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. Thanks for the support and enjoy the video.
And so, if people want to speculate that, and given, things like the intelligence ties, his ties to powerful people, and things like that, it's certainly possible. But, more often than not, I mean, cases, prominent people like Jeffrey Epstein that threaten, powerful interests with spilling the beans on things. They don't want the beans, they don't want the beans to be public, basically. They can get off in prison even if they're under constant watch. So a good example of this that was in a recent article I did is this Italian man named Michele Sindona. And Michele Sindona went to prison for the collapse of a couple of banks, but it was all tied to this massive scandal involving this Masonic lodge in Italy that was called Propaganda 2 or P2, that was basically exposed to contain prominent business leaders, acolytes of Mussolini-style fascism in Italy, top politicians, and all sorts of very powerful figures basically meeting in secret to try and undermine and subvert the government. And they also had ties to CIA operations going on at the time, like Operation Gladio, and also had ties to organized crime, specifically the Sicilian mafia, which Luciano, who I mentioned earlier, the associate of Lansky, was deported in the World War II era, or I think maybe, or I can't remember the exact year, but around the time of the war, if not immediately after. To Italy, and got involved in that nexus as well. So Michele Sindona could have endangered a lot of powerful people, and he was under 24/7 police watch in this prison, and they were checking his food and all this stuff, and someone put cyanide in his coffee and he died in prison, despite having all of this security to try and keep him from being killed off. He was killed off. So, we don't really know, again, what happened to Epstein, but, generally in these types of cases, they do tend to get offed if they threaten to spill the beans. And it seemed like Epstein may have been willing to do that. But then again, it depends on how important of an asset he may have been. And I think that remains to be seen. So I'm happy to keep, an open mind if new evidence is presented that supports that theory. But, for reasons I just explained and past precedent about similar cases, I tend to think he died. And I don't think he did it the way the official narrative says. But I would say that he definitely had help if he did kill himself, you know, and that there's obviously, I think, something about his death that they don't really want to come out. And I think, you know, it would be embarrassing too, in a sense, for the first for the current administration, because of course it was the first Trump administration when all of this happened. So it was the William Barr led Department of Justice that technically has responsibility for whatever happened to Epstein in prison.
I do have a question about this as well. Many are asking if Israel was and is still blackmailing Donald Trump.
Yeah, so I don't think Israel needs to blackmail Donald Trump. Why? Because Donald Trump wouldn't exist as a business or political figure if he hadn't. And the Rothschild family has longstanding ties to the Israeli state, and also to, you know, the popularization of Zionism in the early 20th century and slightly before then. So, you know, he really owes that bank a lot. And Wilbur Ross, who was the banker working for N.M. Rothschild at the time Trump was bailed out, you know, was rewarded by Trump as being his first Secretary of Commerce, even though Wilbur Ross was like, at that point, I mean, he still is geriatric, but he was geriatric at that point too, and was falling asleep in meetings and things like that. And it's not like he was doing a good job, right? So I was widely seen as being a favor for having helped bail Trump out in the early 90s. And it's interesting how Trump sort of got involved in those issues in the first place, because in 1987, I believe, he took a controlling stake in this company called Resorts International that had been linked to organized crime interests, specifically Lansky in the Caribbean. For many, many years, and was allegedly created as some sort of CIA front involving the Dulles brothers, who had organized crime connections also. So he took a controlling stake in that and used it to sort of expand his holdings in Atlantic City, which at the time they were trying to make into the new Vegas, basically. And so, and then that same year, he buys like Adnan Khashoggi's yacht, which Adnan Khashoggi had previously used for sexual blackmail, as I note in my book. And then he starts popping up on, like, or Trump does, on Robert Maxwell's yacht, the Lady Ghislaine, taking pictures with Maxwell, a senator for the late former Senator John Tower, who was Robert Maxwell's main accomplice in his aspect of the Promise software scandal. And then Steve Ross, who I think was CEO of Time Warner at the time. And Ross basically started his company that later took over Warner Brothers, using an organized crime run company. And so there's just a lot of, you know, obviously a cesspool of this world. And it really shouldn't be surprising that Trump would inhabit these kind of social circles, because his mentor was a man named Roy Cohn, and Roy Cohn was involved in, you know, sexual blackmail activities at the Plaza Hotel, which Trump later bought, and then later, you know, had teamed up with elite model management of Casablancas to host Look of the Year there for a few years. And sorry, I lost my train of thought. Sorry, a lot of pieces to keep track of here, but basically he's in this, you know, Robert Maxwell world. And sorry, I was talking about Roy Cohn. And Roy Cohn not only was involved in sort of those, you know, sexual blackmail networks, he was also pretty much it's very easy to document, a bridge between organized crime and political power in the US. He was involved in the Nixon administration. He was involved in the Reagan administration, while also serving serving as lawyers for top mob bosses, basically.
A lot of
and
it
also
goes
being
back-
Donald Trump's lawyer for like Studio 54 and some of these, you know, shadier nightclubs, which is actually supposedly where Trump met Casablancas of elite models.
It's no news that Jeffrey Epstein was not an isolated figure. He operated inside a web of intelligence cutouts, financial kingmakers, and organized crime networks that extended far beyond his infamous circle of friends. When Whitney traces Donald Trump's rise, through bailouts from Rothschild-connected bankers, through his ties to Robert Maxwell's blackmail operations, through his mentorship under Roy Cohn, it becomes difficult to ignore the parallels. Epstein was useful as an asset until he became a liability. Trump, on the other hand, appears to have always been a carefully managed figure, one whose survival and success were bound to the same machinery of influence. The uncomfortable question is whether Trump, like Epstein, is simply a tool in a larger game. This brings us back to Epstein's prison death, or disappearance. Whitney argues that if he truly did die, he did not do so alone, and history shows that figures who threaten to expose too much rarely leave prison alive. The CBS investigation underscores just how riddled with anomalies the official story really is. On the night Epstein supposedly hanged himself, surveillance cameras in the special housing unit were functional but left unmonitored. The digital recording system mysteriously failed, wiping out most of the footage. He was taken off suicide watch despite being labeled a high risk, and the one safeguard in place, his required cellmate, was conveniently removed hours before his death. The staff on duty skipped their 30-minute rounds, later falsified records, and were eventually let off the hook with no accountability. It's this pattern of negligence, or perhaps deliberate sabotage, that makes the official explanation collapse under its own weight. As CBS reported, the government insisted anyone entering or attempting to enter the tier where Epstein's cell was located from the SHU common area would have been captured by this footage. Yet, the video tells a different story. The CBS report notes, and I quote, "When Epstein appears on camera, he is seen walking toward the stairs leading to his cell, but since the staircase is almost entirely out of view from the camera, he is never seen ascending. The entrance to Epstein's cell, as well as the primary entrance to the SHU, are off-camera in the same direction, meaning there's no way to tell from the video if he went to his cell or exited the SHU. So what really happened that night? Was Epstein silenced to protect the powerful, or quietly extracted to continue serving them elsewhere?" Whitney Webb doesn't claim to have the final answer, but she makes one thing undeniable. The official narrative is a lie, and the truth, whatever it is, was buried alongside Epstein's secrets. If you found this breakdown eye-opening, don't let it end here. Drop a comment with your thoughts on whether Epstein was silenced or saved. And if you want to hear more hard-hitting analysis from Whitney Webb and others who dig where few dare to, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. This story is far from over. Thanks for watching.